Hi all. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about something that's shaping up to be one of the highlights of the year for independent optometry. It's the OptiPro Roadshow 2025. And if you're an avid listener of the podcast, I'm sure you're very passionate about the future of eye care. If that's the case, the Roadshow is something you want to be a part of. This event series will take place in Sydney on the 26th of September, Brisbane on the 10th of October, and Perth on the 17th of October. Expect supplier showcases, keynote presentations, networking, and tailored content that speaks directly to the challenge and opportunities in independent practices today. Spots are filling fast, so register at optipro.com.au.
Welcome to The Focused View, the podcast for eye care professionals across Australia. Brought to you by Opticare. In each episode, we bring together leading eye care, optical and business professionals to share valuable insights, practical tips, and the latest trends shaping the optical business landscape. I'm your host, Michael Nasser, and together we'll explore innovative strategies for practice growth, patient care, and business success in the eye care industry. Whether you're starting your career, managing a practice, or just looking to stay ahead of the field, The Focused View is your source for inspiration and knowledge.
In today's episode, we're joined by somebody who embodies passion, longevity, and leadership in optics, Joy Livingood Gibb. With nearly 4 decades of experience across independent practices, ophthalmology, mobile optical services, and now practice management, Joy has built a career grounded in both patient care and education. What makes Joy stand out is not just her knowledge, but her dedication to training and uplifting others. She has helped lead programs like the Pinnacle program in the US, which brings hands-on practical learning to optical teams, from mastering lensometers to refining dispensing skills. Her belief is simple but powerful. When the entire team is educated and aligned, patients receive not just glasses, but tailored solutions that genuinely enhance their lifestyle. In this conversation, we'll explore how to move from selling products to solving problems, how to uncover patient needs they may not even realize they have, and why defining your personal and practice why can transform the culture of a store. If you're looking for strategies to elevate training, deepen patient relationships, and create a more intentional practice culture, this is an episode you don't want to miss. So let's get into it. Joy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, really glad to have you in today and really sort of excited to talk about all the things we've got planned to talk about. So I guess for a lot who may not know, and just from that glimpse from the accent, you're not from Australia, but for those that don't know you, and from an Australian point of view, there might be a few. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you got into the optical industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I officially started in 1986, but prior to that, I started wearing glasses when I was 6 years old. I'm now a minus 1450, so I have absolutely had experience from a personal standpoint and a professional standpoint. I started in 1986 and worked at an independent opticianry and worked with an optometrist, did my own mobile optical for a little while, and I'm currently a practice manager for an ophthalmologist in Utah, just north of Salt Lake City, and absolutely love what I do. I don't think I've worked a day in my life. I've been very fortunate.
And I guess when you're passionate about something, it makes things a little bit easier too. You've mentioned that you've been in optics since 1986. Optical, ophthalmology, mobile services, practice management. What's kept you so passionate about the profession for so long?
I love my patients, and I love that no 2 days are ever the same. I love that there's always something to keep me on my toes, a new problem to solve, a new way to look at things. I honestly believe that passion isn't found, it's developed. And I think I've been so fortunate in the last 40 years to watch this industry change. And, I never in a million years thought that we'd be seeing things like photochromatic polarized lenses and all the cool stuff that we are doing now, and the progress that we've made in vision correction, whether it's through surgery or through glasses or contact lenses. And I don't think anybody in this industry can just sit on their laurels and say, I'm a veteran, I'm experienced, because everything is rapidly changing and moving at such a fast pace that I think you really do have to have that desire to stay on top of what's current and what's coming. And I just really always find, man, I don't ever want my patients to come in and ask me if I know about a product that they've heard about that I haven't heard about. So for me, education is a huge part of it, and just really refining my passion for what I do.
And it's pretty clear that, the clinical knowledge is strong. You've obviously, having opened up a mobile service, being a practice manager now, your retail skills are obviously on point. And you've just touched on education and the importance of, and the relevance of, staying informed, and I guess continually having education be front and center for the benefit of your patients primarily. How has that shaped your approach with patient care specifically? And I guess, tying all those in together, what does that mean you can provide your patients?
So for me, I'm really fortunate that I get to go out and teach as well. And I think I've had more exposure to the new products coming before they maybe even hit a lot of the general market. And so for me, I get so excited to say, oh, I found this new frame line, or, oh, there's this new lens technology coming down the pike, or, oh, there's such a better way to manage your billing and your practice management software. And so for me, I just think that every time I go to an educational meeting, or I, pick up a trade publication, or I look at online educational experiences, I'm always looking for what's the next exciting thing that I can bring back to my patient, because I truly believe that patients deserve the best care and that the sell is never over. There's always something my patients can use, and it's my responsibility to find out what that is and not get stuck in that rut to really enhance their visual and lifestyle experience.
And I think what's clear with everything that you're saying to this point, and the topics that we'll discuss further, is that, that core concept of the patient, being at the center of everything, when it's all tied back into the patient. And when that's done, it can become really powerful, and it becomes more than, and we'll touch on this, it becomes more than just a transaction. It becomes a relationship. It becomes a friendship. It becomes so much more when they become the center of the experience, I guess, as opposed to it being a product and knowing why this product will benefit everyone. It's more about, well, how's it going to benefit a particular person that you may know needs it. But before we sort of get into that, when we were doing our pre-interview, there was a concept that you sort of, which you mentioned, which is, I think, very important. And I think it started by you mentioning Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. And I know that the why is an important concept for you. Why is it important for a practice to clearly identify and understand their why?
Yeah. So Simon Sinek has a fabulous theory of starting with why. He basically talks about this bullseye that you have 3 rings. The center one says why, the next one out says how, and the furthest one out says what. Our natural human inclination is to start with, what do I have to do? I'm a very listy girl. And so, every day, what do I need to accomplish? And sometimes at the end of the day, I get to the middle circle and go, why did I just spend all this time doing that? It really wasn't a priority. It really wasn't where my focus needed to be. So I've adopted the beginning with why in my own life, whether it's personal or professional. So for me, when I go to my office, my why is that it cannot be financially motivated. That's a huge part of it right there. Yeah. And so when I go into my office, my why is that I want every patient that comes through the door to have the best possible experience, and that they can walk out with the best possible visual acuity and lifestyle enhancements. So that means I don't judge what I think people can or cannot afford. I do not make the call on how many pairs I think they should have or how many I think they're going to buy. My job is to responsibly present what I really believe is crafting the best eyewear possible for the patient, so that not only do they see well, but we enhance lifestyle. I think one of the things that always comes to mind is the older patient who comes in, and let's say that they play the piano and they're getting arthritic and their hands hurt and their necks hurt, and they really can't be in one pair of glasses and kinking their neck back to try and see the music. So for me to be able to provide a solution that says you can keep your neck right where it needs to be to see the music, to look down at your hands on the keys, I love providing that kind of a solution where people are able to say, I love being able to do this. I love that I get to keep my independence. I love that this enhances my hobbies. So for me, it really is taking care of the whole patient, not just a prescription. It's taking care of generations of families. And I really think that when I use my why effectively, the how becomes super easy, because now I know my how is I present all the wonderful solutions I know of to my patients. I know what I need to craft to make personalized eyewear that will solve visual acuity and lifestyle. And what happens, and we touched on this, I despise transactional relationships. So what happens is, as I'm finding out these things about the patient, I'm really getting to know them and developing a relationship so that, one, I can answer and address their wants and their needs, but two, I'm really developing a true relationship and they trust me. And when they come back in, they know I'm not going to just sell them on something, but that I'm truly crafting what they need and what I feel would be best for them. And my approach is always, let's talk about it. How many pairs of glasses do we all own? And there's a reason why we own that many pairs. Why do we suddenly just think, oh, our patients, if we get one or two out of them, we're going to be so good? No, you could seriously craft an entire eyewear wardrobe to address all kinds of visual lifestyle and acuity needs and really enhance somebody's experience in life. And for me, that's kind of what it's about, is being able to say, I've done the very best by you that I can. The beautiful thing is, once I've answered that why and the how, the what is wonderful relationships, but the what is also profitability. And there is nothing wrong with that. No. There's nothing wrong with being profitable. The money will come when you operate from a place of integrity and a place of passion. The money will follow.
Yeah, that makes total sense when you frame it like that, and also is extremely powerful, I think, if people can really understand, the dynamics of what was just explained there. How do you keep your why present in daily practice so that naturally ties into each stage of the patient journey? If you can tie that into some type of relevance, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. I truly believe that practices need to develop a practice why. It's important to have an individual why, but I think there needs to be a practice why. I truly believe that Disney has one of the best business ideologies around, and they have a saying that says, no one owns the guest, but everyone owns a moment with the guest. And for me, I think that's such an important concept. Nobody owns a patient, but everybody owns an opportunity with a patient. And so I think it's important that we craft a practice why. What are our core values? Integrity, experience, humor, whatever it is. Your practice needs to decide as a practice. But then individually, how do we as team members exemplify and live those core values at each touch point? So for my front desk, that might be when they call to confirm or make an appointment, we're suggesting bring in all your glasses. That suddenly plants that seed that, I should have more than one pair of glasses. The people that are doing the pre-workups, they're talking about macular degeneration and finding out hobbies and doing family histories and those types of things. The optometrist then comes in and they really focus on lifestyle and family history and how to retain vision that we have and how to restore vision that they've lost. And then that transfer to the optical technician really does become a collaborative effort of everybody at these different touch points, really preparing the patient for the ultimate eyewear experience, and that it's going to be more than one pair.
And what would you say, the practice why is an interesting concept, because the question that I was going to ask is, does your why become the practice why? But I think what you're saying is the practice why is potentially different. But to be fair, do you see in successful practices that you've been around, do you tend to find that the individual's why and the store's why will be closely similar? Or can you have an instance or an example where maybe someone's individual why is different to the store's why, but it can still be a successful, situation, or is it more or less the fact that you do need to see a marrying of the whys for true success in this instance?
Yeah. I think that you will find naturally that the whys will align similarly.
Yeah.
You will find that. However, I also want individuals to be individuals. I need them to have those emotional connections and good relationships with the patient. And if it starts to sound like cookie cutter, everybody in the office is saying the same thing, there's not a whole lot of sincerity behind that. And so for me, being able to have team members that really know the practice why, that helps them develop their own individual why. And I promise that as soon as team members start to see some success and how their whys play into another team member's why, there becomes an enthusiasm and an excitement and oh, look at the results we're getting. Like that makes such a huge difference. And then it's easier for the office to live the office way. Because eventually, even if they don't start the same, they will end up very, very similar. And this is what becomes very apparent. If you have team members who are not willing to buy into the why theory, you are tolerating somebody who is not on the same page. Yeah. And that is going to affect patient care, team morale. It just isn't going to work. And so if you really develop this why and you get everybody on board from a practice standpoint and a personal standpoint, it becomes very apparent who you want in the boat with you rowing.
And that's straight away what I've been able to pick up with you explaining this. It's almost like part of your HR, I guess, is if this is embedded in the way that you recruit and the way that your team develops. And if you're using this indicator relatively early on, it does embed itself in quite deeply, and it can be a metric that you can utilize to identify maybe from more of an attitude point of view if you have the right person, which is always one of the main challenges businesses have. It's like, how do we get the same people, like you said, rowing in the same way? And it can be such a pivotal point. So if you're able to then benchmark this as an example, it's a good way to actually, be able to articulate what you're kind of looking for and whether you're finding it or not. And if you're not, then realizing, well, this is why.
And I think another part of that is it feeds into retention of team members.
For sure. Yeah.
Because if they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, if they're just showing up to do their job and their job only, there's not a whole lot of fulfillment in that. And so for me, when you start to work as a team and doing the whys, it does create this environment of doing something that is bigger than just yourself. You are part of a movement and part of just something that's more effective and beneficial for the patient.
And I think why this industry has this particular aspect of it to be such a critical part is because we're one of the only industries that mixes retail sales with a healthcare, I guess, item and with a medical aid and a medical device. Yep. It's a fashion item. I mean, you've mentioned eyewear wardrobe, so you can have multiple, whether it's because of specific needs or a style, you've got that side of it. But then at the core of it, you do have the healthcare side. You have the vision correction, and not many tie those two together. So if you're really being stemmed from the best interest of the patient, it does really create, something quite unique. And I feel like more than any other industry, it's one that really can have that why be so important and then translate to your offering in many ways.
Absolutely.
One thing that I know you're quite strong on is having a patient-centric optical flow. And you've already touched on a few items with regards to, I think you mentioned touch points specifically, when the store and the individuals within the store interacting with the patient. We can refer to those optical flow for lack of a better term. But if we look at the optical flow from a patient, experiencing the store from first instance through to, having a pair of glasses and walking out with them potentially, what do you see as the key stages in a patient-centric optical flow?
I think they need to understand and feel like everybody is interested in giving them best visual acuity, best possible outcomes, because it should not be a situation where we go medical. Congratulations, you're now in the dispensary and we're going to sell you on something. It should never be a sales point when they get to the optical. It should really be, Here's how we take what we've educated you about and turn it into real life solution. And so for me, there should be talk about product. Every point of that optical flow, there should be talk of product. There should be talk of eye health and why we're testing this and why we're going to talk about certain products. Again, I don't think the people on the exam side have to know all the nitty-gritty details about products, but they need to know enough to know who's going to benefit from them and why they're going to benefit. So if you've got somebody with a family history of macular degeneration, I'm clearly going to want to speak to that with the patient even before the doctor comes in to say, due to the fact that you now have a family history, you're genetically predisposed. There are things we can do for you, but there's also things we could recommend for your children and grandchildren.
Right.
So all of the sudden, it's not just the patient in the chair that we're trying to wring their wallet out. It is, we care enough about you to tell you and give you the heads up that you should also be talking to your children and grandchildren, and let's get them scheduled for an exam so we can kind of get a good baseline and start watching them. So for me, that's where there sometimes gets to be a disconnect, is the patient has felt like, you know, there's this exam going on and really we just stand between them and an expired prescription, and then we sell them something. Whereas if we go back and we really start creating that culture of, we want to know things about you. We want to know your lifestyle. We want to know your health history. We want to know recent medications. So that really, if there's anything that rings a bell for us to say, that would be a great pair of glasses, that conversation starts before they ever get into the optical. And it becomes more of a collaborative effort amongst the whole team to create fabulous eyewear for the patient in the end.
And would you say that's something that needs to be factored into the practice's operations process? Like, so that you're saying the optometrist would basically also know what's being done at first instance as well? Like, I mean, how clear should that flow look like? And I guess, how does that then get incorporated into the practice, especially if you don't have anything? So, you know, if a practice is listening today and they're like, oh, you know, that's an awesome idea, how do we actually start to integrate that into the practice?
You commit.
Yeah.
I mean, that just sounds like such a silly answer, but that's the biggest problem, is people are not committing, right? Like, and let's be honest, first patient of the day versus 20th patient of the day, we're tired. We want to go home. But that 20th patient deserves every bit as much effort and attention as the first patient of the day. And so for me, it is really important that we train entire staff, right? Entire staff is wearing the product so they can speak to it and say, I wear this. Entire staff has opportunity to get family into it, to say, my mom wears this lens, or this is the lens I put my grandfather in, and it's made a huge difference for him doing this hobby. So for me, there is a huge part of that we have to be able to talk to the points of, what is the product? Who is it good for? How have we seen success with it? Let's figure out some real life success stories. And then I think it parallels with that, what is my why? If I know what my why is, then I know that I want to be offering these products, but I can't offer something I don't know about, right? I can't sell something I know nothing about. And so as we work through this, you know, my suggestion is always, don't leave your front desk out of talking about the newest lens style. Don't leave the doctor out of talking about the newest frame style, because all of those things culminate into making great eyewear for the patient and a great experience for the patient. So my take has always been, I love my doctors. I think they're intelligent. I think that they are, you know, fabulous at what they do, but I'm really good at what I do. And I don't expect to know everything that happens in the lane, and they don't need to know everything that happens in the dispensary. But we do need to meet in the middle and share knowledge and share ideas so that the patient gets the best possible care available.
Yeah. And if we speak to that point specifically, what do you see as being the ideal handoff between an optometrist and a dispenser? Like, obviously, you know, you mentioned at the beginning, we're compiling information, we're understanding their needs. That's leading on, obviously, to the consultation itself. What does that look like then once the consultation's taken place, the exams happen? What does that ideal handover look like, between the optometrist or the doctor across to the dispenser or technician?
So ideal would be that the person who's doing the pre-workup has said to the optometrist, this is what Mrs. Smith is interested in today. These are some of the things that we've talked about. So now the optometrist has that baseline, right? Like, patient has mentioned piano, patient has mentioned fishing, patient has whatever it is. So then the collaborative effort comes when the optical technician comes in and they have a moment where the doctor says, this is what I'm thinking, and I think this might be a good recommendation, but you know better than I do about the lenses that are available. What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Couple things that happen there is it endorses the skills of people inside the office besides the optometrist.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think that that's so important because team members shouldn't have to run to the optometrist all the time to answer the patient's question. So if we can endorse skills, right, and we can see that this is a collaborative effort between optometrists and team members, that makes a huge difference for the patient. And to have that conversation in front of them and to be able to include them and say, if I'm understanding correctly, this is what hobby you want to do, and this is about where you're going to hold something. So that's going to require a little different prescription than a normal reading length. So let's, get you a prescription for a pair of glasses that if you're going to paint little tiny figurines and they're going to be maybe 6 to 8 inches from your nose, that's a different pair of glasses than your regular reading glasses.
And in this instance, like, do you ever see breakdowns? Like, what are some of the common breakdowns? I mean, I think it's great, that idea of having the optometrist endorse the skills of the optician or the optical dispenser, with regards to these guys are the experts in, or girls are the experts in, lens recommendations over and above what we've discussed. Have you sometimes seen some breakdown points? Like, have you seen issues? Have you seen some concerns that could basically, pop up in this transition? And how can you avoid those?
So there's a couple different things that can pop up. One, you're understaffed. And so you really don't have enough people to come in and effectively do those collaborations. If you get really busy in the optical and you don't have enough staff, you're not going to really be able to do that super effectively.
Yeah.
The second one is all of a sudden, if the patient is hearing this pair of glasses and that pair of glasses and this pair of glasses and that pair of glasses, we are literally just presenting opportunities. And so sometimes you might need to say, we don't anticipate that you'll purchase all of these today, but let's prioritize what's most important to you. So what things would you like to take care of first? Is it the hobby? Is it the sunwear? Whatever it is, what do you want to prioritize? We do expect that you are going to buy multiple pairs of glasses from us, but we don't want to set you into a tailspin thinking you're going to drop thousands of dollars today when we can strategically plan out how to get these for you over a period of time, right? Yeah. Because then the other thing is, it's not just optical coming in and selling, it's doctor reinforcing. And I think that when the reinforcement happens and we follow it with don't panic, that does lend itself a little more easily to the multiple pairs.
Yeah. I think, even hearing you speak about it, I mean, the confidence that you have in explaining it in that way, it doesn't come across as salesy. It doesn't come across as, a bad thing, I guess, for a lack of a better term. But, the confidence to be able to say that you're more than likely going to need multiple pairs, taking them through that journey of the potential of what it could be, not assuming they're only going to want one pair, opening up, I guess, that opportunity for, options. And ultimately, it is the patient's decision as to what they decide to do, when and where, and then being able to have this, you said strategic, I love the word strategy, but having a strategy where you can say, and even using a term that you used before, the eyewear wardrobe, I mean, like, you could even proposition that in a way where it's like, clients may have an eyewear wardrobe. These are the sort of things that, that could be in it. And these are the sort of things to think about. Yeah. So I think that's really powerful.
I have to tell you, one of the things I learned really early on in my professional career is when a patient would say to me, you're just trying to sell me. I honestly took offense to that. Honestly, that rubbed me the wrong way. And I learned a kind way to say that is, No, I'm merely educating you about your options, and then you
Yeah.
get to select what you'd like to do. I'm
Yeah.
just here to help facilitate what I think would be best, but ultimately it's your decision. The other one is the patient who goes, "Oh, you wouldn't tell me if this was ugly on me because you just want me to, buy it." And I'm like,
Mm.
"No, you are my walking billboard. And if they're ugly, please don't tell anybody where you got them." So, I mean, for me, it's just I care about what I do. Like, I
Yeah.
have some pride in what I do that for me, yeah, I'm educating. I'm not selling.
No, and I think it just speaks to the assumptions that are generally had. And so people are so quick to jump to the conclusions. And I think you also then speak to the power of training, because again, I started off by saying that confidence, to be able to sit down and explain that to somebody, if you're able to respond to it in a confident manner and in a manner that shows that you actually care about them and you're giving them options, it completely changes the dynamic of the relationship. And I'm sure you would have seen it. When that patient said that to you in reflection, do you feel like that was maybe something that you hadn't spent enough time doing with them initially in terms of communicating before they said that? Or do you feel like that individual had probably been burnt before? And, did you look much into why that happened and how you can avoid that going forward?
Yeah, I think I was pretty green in my dispensing at that
Yeah.
point. It was pretty early on in my career.
Mm.
And I suddenly really comprehended that eyewear wasn't being looked at as a medical device or
Mm-hmm.
a lifestyle enhancement device.
Mm.
It was like buying a car, right? It was just something we have to buy. It's a commodity. I have
Yeah.
to see. And so I think being very green, I think that's when I kind of finally went, no, wait a minute. I really enjoy what I do and I have total faith in what I do. And I believe that what I'm doing is right. And that's, that is one of my core values is I don't want to stray from integrity. I'm going to be very cautious in what I recommend so that it's the right and appropriate product so that patients will trust me when they come back.
Yeah. And I feel like it goes back to that training and understanding and knowing. What I tend to find is, in order to be someone that's trusted or a trusted advisor, you need to sometimes make somebody aware of something that they didn't realize that they had as a problem, or a bit of advice that they didn't see. But when you tell it to them or explain it to them, they're like, "Oh, now that you mention it, that is a way that I need to think about that." Or the example you gave of macular degeneration, when if you've identified the individual that has it in the family and then being able to speak, it's like, "Oh yeah, to the family, I should." And that's I think the sort of information, that's the sort of communication that helps build trust. And I guess, how can you uncover a patient's need that they may not realize they've even had, or they have? Like, how do you go about that, knowing that you know it or you can see it, and then being able to articulate that to them in a way that comes across as advice that you're looking to really sort of help and guide them?
Yeah. So I think we've talked about relationships and how important relationships are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you ask questions, there's multiple reasons why you're asking them. One is because you want to be genuinely interested in getting to know who the patient is, what they enjoy, about their family, what are their plans this weekend. And if they said to me, "I'm going to garden," I'm going to say, "Oh, do you have a pair of great sunglasses that you can garden in that are going to be impact resistant? Because I would hate for a tree to snap back and have a limb hit you in the eye."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, these are things that people don't think about. And so as I'm just finding out about them, yes, we have the lifestyle questionnaires. Yes, those are lovely. But it's also, if I talk to them and say, tell me about how much time you spend on a screen. Well, if they're coming in and they can't put down their phone the entire time they're in there, it's really easy for me to say, "I've observed. And did you know that we have some lenses that will help you with digital devices and help keep your eye healthy at the same time?" And so for me, there are those questions that develop the relationship. Simple questions. What are your plans this weekend? Tell me about your last family reunion. Tell me what's exciting in your life. What was the best thing you did this summer? Then that allows me to get to know the patient, but it also allows me to get to know the patient's needs.
Yeah.
And then I can create expectations and solutions for them.
And that was going to be my next question. It was going to be, what are some of the questions that we can ask to help uncover these better solutions. And I think you've just answered them. So unless there's any more that you wanted to add, I feel like that's that one done.
Yeah, asking about their work, asking about where are you planning on, holding that? Those are questions that I think sometimes we don't really ask. Like, if this is a hobby that you do, is there a special length that you hold that book? Is there a special length that music sits at? Do your computer screens sit further away?
Yeah.
Because that helps us create and not have disappointment. I just don't understand. Like the doctor says, I'm supposed to be able to read out of these. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, well, you wanted to, read at 6 inches. That's a whole different prescription. Yeah. So managing those expectations by finding out more information.
Yeah. And how would you've identified some of the important items there when it comes to really understanding your patient's needs, helping them problem solve and identifying areas that we can be of assistance to them. But how do you train the staff to move from selling products to solving problems? Is it a case of starting with their why and seeing if that's the case and then developing it? Or is there more to it?
So I think it depends on how new they are to the industry. I don't think people can really create an effective why until they know what it is that they're supposed to be doing, right? So if we approach this as you're selling glasses, that's probably not the direction I want to go. I want to start with, this is how we create ideal situations. This is how we create ideal pairs of glasses. Because if they're coming in with what is the typical population idea, this is just another retail experience where they're buying, a retail commodity.
Yeah.
They need to get out of that mindset. It needs to be a situation where we are addressing how to make your life easier and better. How do we do that? So I think as you come in, it's so important for us to, one, show enthusiasm, but two, really help them understand this is product A. These are the people it's good for. This is how you would talk about it. I'm recommending this lens material. And I'm recommending it because if you're driving and an airbag deploys, I really don't want lenses shattering into your eyes. I say that all the time. I have patients go, oh, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just that moment of saying, this is why I'm recommending it. This is what you've said is bothersome to you. I don't feel safe driving at night. I very rarely will get in the car and drive at night. Well, we could do some glasses specific to driving to give you a little more help in bringing in more light. And while it may not make you feel 100% safe, you may find that you can spend a little more time out on the road and be a little more independent. Would you like that? What patient is going to tell you that, no, I really don't want to be independent anymore? Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
You can't even go to the grocery store or get gas or, just if you don't feel safe driving, what is your world shrinking to? And so it really is just that, let me have some compassion. Let me find out what's going on. What are your concerns? What are your priorities? And then let me speak to the products that I'm recommending in a way that brings value to you. The phrase I like to use is, what this means to you is fill in the blank with whatever they've told you. I feel unsafe driving. I don't get to play my piano as often. I don't really have as good of an experience, cycling because I'm coming in after dark and my lenses, are sunglass lenses. And I'm not, I don't want to have to change out glasses when I'm cycling. I have a solution for that. Let me tell you about it.
And so you ask that question to patients?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's a good little tip. A lot of things that we're discussing are product-based. And I guess, invariably, it's the same in Australia as it is in the States. There are, I think you guys refer to them as vendors or suppliers. We use the term suppliers quite often. And a lot of the product is obviously filtered through suppliers. What's the importance of, say for lenses and labs, contact lens companies, frames, what's the importance of, your supply partners? And trying to identify who is best to partner with or why you're partnering with them. And can you speak to that a little bit? Because obviously they become a big part of the solutions and the solution-based selling that we're effectively speaking about here in, correcting a lot of these problems that we're identifying.
Any manufacturer and any lab needs to be viewed as a business partner. You're not doing them a favor by buying their product. You're not. They are helping you enhance patient experience and invest in making better sales, right? So for me, when I look at that, I want to say, okay, do I have confidence that when I talk to them, they really are going to be able to tell me about the product from an unbiased standpoint? Don't tell me what's wrong with everybody else's product. Tell me what's right with your product. Tell me what concerns I should have. Be able to tell me manufacturer details like, what's the Abbey value? What materials can I get it in? If you're not asking those kinds of questions, how will you ever tell the story to your patient about why it's important? Now, I'm never going to say to my patient, this is the lens I recommend because it has a better Abbey value. Yeah. That doesn't mean anything to the patient, but it does mean something when I say, you've mentioned that you're struggling with your low light vision. If we put you in this lens, this is a better lens for optics than our other options. And so for me, your manufacturers, your labs need to be able to come in and speak to things that will help you tell the story to the patient of why they want it, why it's a benefit to them.
And how important are they in the training of your staff?
Immensely. And it's more than just let me bring you lunch. A meeting without lunch is still a meeting. We don't need to feed everybody every time we get together. Yeah. But I do think that for them to be able to come in and speak to technical aspects of the lens, I think that's so important. If you don't know how to measure a manufacturer's specific lens, if you don't know proper placement, if you don't know proper lens materials, I don't care how good the product is. If you're not good at measuring and talking through expectations, the patient will never understand the full value of that product. And so when these manufacturers come in, they really should be doing a training with everyone and explaining, not just take this measurement, why do you take this measurement? A lot of people are why people. And so when we're training, if we can address those whys, why do I have to take the measurement that way? Well, because if you don't, this is the consequence. And so for me, they know their products better than anyone. And I really do believe that they should be coming in and doing some hands-on training with the entire staff. It's not just the optical. It really is the whole staff that needs to know so that they can speak to it if patients have questions.
Yeah. And so ongoing investment, and something you've mentioned early on is, your passion stems from education and continually learning. Obviously, that's generally, you're probably, you're seeking out information more often than probably it being given to you, because that's just probably inherently how you're built. What can you say about the importance of ongoing investment in staff training? I mean, I'm assuming you're going to say it's a non-negotiable. From that point of view, what is the benefit, and how does that look like? I mean, is it something that should be done weekly, monthly, yearly? Like, what in your perspective is the right amount of training?
It is a non-negotiable. And I think one of the things that I hear optometrists say more often than not is, what if I invest in getting them educated and then they leave? My first response to that is, what if you don't invest and they stay? Yeah. You are a reflection of who you've hired, right? And so if you have somebody who's not well trained, who doesn't know how to speak to issues, it's a reflection of you as the optometrist. Secondly, I think there's an easy solution for that. I think if you are going to make a good investment in a team member, you can say, look, I'm investing this into you. I need you to sign a contract saying you will be with me X number of months after this training is completed. Right. And if you leave before that, we will prorate that expense that has cost me to train you. Okay. And that is what you will owe me if you leave before this contract is through. Right? Yeah. I think that sends a message that education is important to our practice. It is important for you to be well-rounded, well-educated, able to answer questions and not having to pass off those things. And I think there is always opportunity. I've done this for, 40 years. And there's never a weekend that I go out and teach that I don't come home and go, that was a fabulous suggestion. That was a fabulous insight. I don't care how tenured and veteran you are. Make sure that you are at least doing monthly trainings, if not more often, depending on how new your staff is, right? Yeah. And how much they need. And I think being able to really address specific subject matter becomes vastly important. If it's always just we're going to talk about lenses again, or, we're going to talk about, no, let's talk about, how do we talk to patients? How do we problem solve this? How do we troubleshoot the RX? What could inherently go wrong if this prescription has opposite signs? It's more than just product training. It's maybe communication skills.
Yeah.
How to be a good team member, how to be gracious and use basic manners, like please and thank you. Sometimes common sense isn't as common as we think it is. And so I think it's important that, you can diversify your training. Let's say you have, staff meetings, maybe once a month it could be geared toward really training on product, but the second time it can be trained on enhancing patient experience. And how do we do that? What does that look like? And I think too, asking them to observe, what have their experiences been? What kind of experiences have they had? And what would they like to bring to the table in our practice? And what did they find absolutely horrific that they wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole?
And I think all of that, I'm just deep in thought, to be fair, because, there are so many good ideas there that have sort of left me going a million ways. One thing in particular that you mentioned was the concept of tying up the training, because one of the questions I was going to ask is, what if an owner of a business says, what if I train them and they leave? And you've mentioned that. It's like, what if you don't and they stay? So, looking at the flip side of the equation, or of the potential problem. But then you mentioned a particular tactic that could be employed by an owner, because obviously as a business owner, you do have a fear inherently, and you want to try and approach that in a way that can be constructive to the business, first and foremost, but to your patients as well, which is one and the same thing, to be fair. And, this concept of contracting them up for a period of time and having a prorated rate where if they did leave early, before that particular agreed period of time, they would have to recoup some of those costs, or the business would recoup some of those costs. In terms of that going into play, have you always seen that to be quite a successful thing? Because the one thing that I'm led to think straight away is if someone doesn't value the training, then they're probably not going to sign the contract. So are you kind of dodging a bullet at the same time as well? If they don't commit to that, it sort of shows that maybe they're not on the boat and they're just doing this for something in between. Have you found that to be the case?
Yes. Never miss a golden opportunity. If an opportunity presents itself and you suddenly go, oh, this person's probably not the right fit, let's not hang on to them. Let's just part ways as soon as we can and bring in somebody who is willing to say, let me be passionate about this. Please train me. I want to be here. And I want to be here for a career, not just a job. For me, that's a huge thing. It's never miss opportunities when you see somebody like that and you're kind of going, oh yeah, no, if they're not gonna be in the boat rowing, let's get them out of the boat.
And I've had some advice, from a previous guest who heads up a lot of the training. So they head up one of the institutes that delivers the Cert 4, and they are often being asked questions from, in Australia, if you're a dispenser and you want to do the training, you've got to be working. You can't take the course if you're not employed in a practice. And so a lot of times, people will field questions to him with regards to, well, do you have anyone that is looking for a job? And he's like, well, all my students are employed and I'm not taking them from one employer to another. But he said, if you're looking for somebody, so he often gives recruitment advice, he'd be like, layer the actual education piece into the advert. And that way, if you do that, you're actually from the outset trying to find that right person, because they'll read it and they'll see training is provided in the practice or as part of the role, and certified training, not just, and if that's the case, it's like, well, people that are going to apply to that are probably at the first instance drawn to something like that. So I think it speaks to a little bit of finding the right person for your store that probably does in some way share the why, but maybe not knowingly. But as you start to unpack that, you do figure out that it all sort of, comes together. So I think there's a lot of really powerful stuff in that. And that one tip I think is fantastic.
Being really forthright in the interviewing process, right? Even if you say, we'll train the right person, because I'm going to tell you, you can't train personality the way you can train skill. Right. So if I'm out and I find somebody that has great customer service, great person to person, skills, I'm going to be wanting to hire them, but I'm going to make it abundantly clear during the interviewing process. We expect that you will get education. We will help you get that education, but we expect that you would be certified in this amount of time. We expect that you would be willing to stay with us for this amount of time. And I think that that is super important, is just to make expectations very clear when you're interviewing with them. Yeah, we'll train you, but there's also going to be this caveat that you will stay with us.
Yeah.
And, I believe in working interviews. I believe that you should bring somebody in and let them work for a day or two with your staff to see how they vibe, because you can tell really quickly somebody who's not going to be on board with the why, with the problem solving, with the wanting to get educated. Chances are good they're just not going to show up the second day if you do a 2-day, working interview.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's a huge part of it, is just being able to say, let's bring you in and see how you vibe.
Yeah, because I think it's these shared standards that, once they're established, then you create it's not necessarily a rule anymore. And this is something we spoke about before. It's not a rule. It just becomes a way of being. And it's like, we're all on the same boat, paddling in the same way. And when that happens, the culture itself looks after itself. And
yep.
You don't have to, you said common sense isn't so common. And, I guess I don't think it is either. But if you've got people that are similarly minded as you are with your beliefs, and, again, we're assuming here that is to be patient-centric and education focused and doing what's best for the patient, and everyone's on board with that, well, then effectively you don't necessarily even probably need rules, because everyone's just going to be working to the beat of the same drum, and we're all sort of going, forward together.
There's a cohesiveness, and your patients will sense that. There's a camaraderie and a cohesiveness that your patients will always sense. And that's why they enjoy coming back. Yeah.
Well, that speaks to the culture. And the thing with culture is it's not something that there's no KPI. Well, there probably is a KPI on culture, to be fair. But, in creating culture and fostering culture, it's something that just happens. Mm-hmm. And some people aren't necessarily strategic about that. And what I like about the chat today and the things that we've spoken about is there are some little ways there that, you can try and can take control of that, because I think that first and foremost is what creates that flow on effect, and that's really powerful stuff.
And I think culture is created, but I think you have to be intentional when you start this. Like, I think there has to be intentions behind, we want a culture and this is how we plan on achieving it. Yeah. And then it blossoms, right? But that intention has to be there first. It has to be intentional. Yeah, it really does. I mean, I think if you come in and just think somehow it's magically going to happen, it won't. And not everybody will agree to be on the same page. Not everybody will agree to give the same advice to patients. And so it really does have to be intentional in order to cultivate that.
Yeah, and it speaks to the challenges that we face as an industry, because the majority of independents, private practice, how you refer to them in the US, but they're generally small in nature. And so they don't have the resources or the know-how. They're not necessarily trained in business and in culture. I mean, generally it's an optometrist owner. In Australia, it's more likely to not be an optometrist owner. I mean, there can be a dispenser owner practice, or not even optically backgrounded business operators. But if you're an optometry practice owner, which is the majority, business is not your forte. Team culture is not your forte. You've gone to university and you've trained to be a clinical optometrist that's diagnosing eye conditions and not really setting up business. So it's one of these things that there is guidance required, and there is, advice that needs to be sought as well, because it won't come naturally. And I think, I guess platforms like this hopefully can help do that, as well as, the many other platforms that exist in and amongst the community.
The beautiful thing about that, though, is you should always understand you don't have to have the answers. Just because you are the owner doesn't mean you have to have all the answers.
For sure.
And the smartest thing you can do is bring in people that will even out your weaknesses with their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So if speaking to culture isn't your strength, bring somebody in and then wholeheartedly back them and support them in that effort and that energy, right?
Yeah.
You bring in people that are good at balancing your weaknesses with their strengths and vice versa. That to me is one of those things that's super important. I don't think it's a bad thing to admit that you have a weakness when it comes to business, right? The whole idea is that collaboration builds amazing teams and amazing experiences.
Yeah, and there are, I guess, with each respective market, there would be associations and groups that are there with that intention to provide support and provide business advice and pair you up. I mean, so I think, and there are a lot of podcasts, a lot of resources out there. I think, to be strategic is to be aware. And I think that's the first part of that is to be aware, and then you become strategic. And so there's a whole heap of, I guess, options and opportunities out there. You just got to seek them and asking questions and speaking to people that have done it before. And I guess that's what it's all about. If we jump back to the optical flow, because the optical flow we've spoken about primarily being in practice. So once they walk in, once they, have the experience of the consultation or the exam, and then the experience through, through selection of eyewear and product and the like. But does it extend beyond the consultation room? And what does that look like for you, sort of beyond the day of purchase or, the day of transacting? What does that look like for you? And how would you deem a successful optical flow incorporating, an after service? If that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So for me, I don't think the sell is ever over. You should never perceive the sell as being over. I think that if we are smart with our time and with our resources, that we talk to the patients, we prioritize what it is they're looking for and what's important to them. And we get through those first initial couple of pairs, perhaps on that first visit. But then I'm going to set myself a reminder, and I'm going to have already measured pair number 3, pair number 4, right. And I'm going to call them and say, good news, it's about time to get this other pair going, and you don't even have to come in. I've already measured you for it.
Wow.
The sale is never over, right? Like I've already given them the expectation of what it's going to cost them. Good news, I'm just going to call you, verify. You don't even have to come back in. The other part of that is, we all have those patients that we should be personal shopping for. And so for me, I know patient, Mrs. Jones loves navy blue frames. If I get some fantastic new navy blue frames in, I am going to call her with a personal invitation.
How good's that?
To come in and look at those navy blue frames. They're going to look amazing on you. And let me bring you in when it's a little more quiet in the office, and we can really spend some one-on-one time looking at this new line. I really know you're going to love it. And so for me, it is that personal touch. It is saying, we're going to maintain this connection even between yearly exams. We're going to maintain that connection. And that happens when you are intentional, when you say, I know you need more than one pair. And even if we don't get them all today, I'm going to set up a plan, and I'm going to take, my calendar out, and I'm going to make myself a note, and I'm going to be intentional in calling you and saying, now it's time to order this next pair. Great news. You don't even have to come back in. It's already taken care of.
I love it. Are there any other little tips like that? Or are there other touch points that you have? I mean, like communication via, I guess you've got your recalls and you've got your, your adjustments and all that sort of stuff too, that will obviously be ongoing, and most do that relatively well. But is there anything that, you've been able to sort of crack the code on with regards to that ongoing service when it comes to, that continual care, whether it's through an EDM or anything along those lines, like an email out or other communication types? Or
yeah, I think that you really do have to be aware when you have new product come in. It's so easy to be able to target a demographic and say, this is a great new lens technology. Let's pull these patients and call and speak to them about it.
Yeah.
Or there's a great new frame line. This is such a great demographic. Let's reach out to those people and do that.
Yeah.
I think it's being aware of your patient. Know your patient. Know your patient, know your customer, right? Like patient in the chair, customer in the optical, but know them. Know them and have enough of a relationship built that when you call and say, hey, there's something new, there's an excitement in them because they trust you, right? And they're going to be like, yeah, absolutely, coming in.
I love that. I mean, like, again, I speak generalistically here. In Australia, the most common call that a patient will get from a practice is a recall, and every 2 years, that's basically the follow-up call to book another. It's time to book in. But I think if you're calling in between that with something like, oh, we've got something in that we know may be of interest to you, that level of personalization I think is really powerful. And to be fair, I'm sure there are practices out there that do it. I haven't heard of it before, but that is really a good point. So if you're in your database, if you're jotting that down and you're able to somehow recall that, because I think that'll be the trick to it. I mean, depending on how big your patient base is, you may not be able to remember everyone. So you might need some tips or to develop a bit of a strategy with regards to how you could. But that phone call, I think specifically, because people think, we can send out an email about a new product. But I think if you're calling them and you're giving them a specific message to them individually,
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful. And that's a catalyst to get more people in. And I think that's a really good tip. So I really like that one.
I love the phrase, it needs to be a whisper, not a shout. And so if I pick up the phone and I call you, that's a whisper.
Yeah.
Mass bulk email is a shout. It's not
You're
very
right.
personalized,
No,
so it needs to be a whisper, not a shout.
Yeah.
And when you take the time to make that phone call, it's a very personalized moment. And what that does for the patient is to go, you're thinking about me? You're thinking about me? I haven't been in for a year and a half and you're thinking about me?
Yeah.
And we're very passionate about pre-appointing. Most of our patients will not get out the door without pre-appointment. Okay. And so we know we're going to see them every year. Like we know, and, I don't know what I'm doing in a year. Well, we both reserve the right to change it, but at least you have it on the books. That's
another really good point. And when you're doing that, what's the catalyst? What's the reasoning for the pre-appointment? Are you stating to them that it's just a general checkup, or would you have tried to identify a reason to have the appointment? Would it be to discuss more product offering? Like, we're saying you might identify they need another pair of glasses later on. What's that reasoning for that pre-appointment? To make it happen, make it occur without them going, I'll just call later on when I need to.
So when our doctor comes out, he will say, I want to see them back in a year. Okay. So as soon as that is said, that expectation has been laid out, right? And then we simply look at them and say, let me go ahead and get that scheduled for you. Like, it's not, would you like me to schedule that? Are you okay if we schedule that? It is, let me get it scheduled for you. Yeah. And we both reserve the right to change it. We know that you don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's not, right? It's not set in stone.
But it's easier to have it on the books and remember that you need to come than it is to try and remember on your own. So let us just help you with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think especially with like contact lens wearers, like we want to look at your cornea every single year. We don't want you to run into trouble to have to come see us. Like, for sure. Let's look at you every year and make sure we have the right material, that we have the right hydration, that we have the right oxygenation. Those things can change, right? Yeah. And so let's see you every year to make sure everything is good. We also do talk a lot about like showing them their fundus photos.
Okay.
Because we want to say, look, this is your baseline. These are the things we're going to look for, and we're going to look for them every year. Patients love seeing their fundus photo. They love that. Can I get a copy of it to take home and show my family? Sure, absolutely. But I think once you start to weave in those little medical components and it's just a standard of care that we expect they're going to follow, that's what we do.
Yeah, and it's something different. And I feel like, if you're offering that and no one else has offered it to them before, it's like all of a sudden you become memorable in another way. And you're going a little bit above and beyond what their expectations are. And I feel like that's a really good thing to be at. So I think in that last sort of 5 or 10 minutes there are some awesome tips for anyone that's listening with regards to ensuring that the patients are getting the most out of it, and the practices too. I feel like there's a benefit for both in some of those suggestions that you've made. That's really great. Sort of coming to an end here and wrapping it all up. If I ask for some sort of reflections or some summary questions, if I may, if our listeners could change one thing tomorrow to improve their optical flow, what would you recommend?
I would wholeheartedly recommend that everybody commits to being on the same page in their core values, like that they all have their whys aligning in what's best for the patient, right? Like for me, that's started. Yeah, it really is. It's really going back and being reflective. Why do you want to be at work? Like if your only answer is because I need the paycheck, this is probably not the job for you, right? Yeah. Yeah. So why do I want to come to work on a Monday morning? Why do I want to be here?
What is it about the job that you like?
Yeah. Figure out what you love and then pursue some of that. Go deeper. Dive deeper into those skills that intrigue you.
And what's one piece of advice you'd give to a practice owner specifically about integrating values into every step of patient care?
Lead by example. Like if you don't believe in this and you are not implementing it by living it, there's a difference between saying this is our standard and actually living your standard. And a standard is not a rule, right? Like rules, we set them and we expect people to follow them. A standard is something we're aiming for. It's a goal that we're trying to meet to better ourselves and better the practice and better the experience for the patient. So you have to lead by example. Yeah.
Love it. I love it.
Thank you.
Joy, that's been awesome. Thank you so much for your tips and insights there. It's really been an awesome conversation and one that I've actually taken a lot from as well. So really appreciate your time, your energy and your thoughts in all of this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we get to do it again.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Hey, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Before we go, just a reminder about the OptiPro Roadshow in 2025. Whether you're a practice owner, manager, optometrist, dispenser, or student, there's something at the OptiPro Roadshow for you. So go to optipro.com.au to register. Hope to see you there.
Thank you for joining us on The Focused View, proudly presented by Opticare. It's been our privilege to share the insights and stories that resonate deeply with the eye care community. We hope today's episode has not only inspired you, but also armed you with the practical strategies and innovative ideas to help you enhance your practice and professional journey. If you found value in our conversation, we'd be grateful if you could leave us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. And share this episode with your colleagues. It helps us reach more eye care professionals like you and grow our community of visionaries. Stay connected by subscribing to The Focused View and visiting our website www.thefocusedview.com.au for additional resources and episode summaries. We look forward to your company again in our next episode. Until then, keep focused. I'm Michael Nasser. Bye for now.